Amanda here with StraightSmile Solutions, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about retention or retainers and how to pick the right retainer for your case. There's no one size fits all approach for this. It's really how it needs to be customized for each case, depending on the occlusion or the bite or the condition that the patient had at the beginning, their growth, and really, finding the right fit for each patient. So some patients come in with kind of a predisposed belief in what type of retention they want. Maybe somebody told them about it, or they read something on the internet, or their friend had something special, but that doesn't mean that's the right retention for that patient. Now, I know for me, I've had every type of retention that's out there at one point or another after my orthodontic work. And for me, the right fit was definitely a Hawley. I know a lot of people think that's old school, but I didn't like Essex retainers. I just didn't like the fact that it felt like you couldn't bite down fully, and I felt like not all my teeth were balanced. So I liked getting a wraparound Hawley so that all my teeth felt balanced. It also removed a lot of like headaches, tension headaches, issues with TMD. For me, that was the right fit. I can't promise you that's the right fit for you or your patient, but there are 4 primary retention choices that I like to talk about, and we'll kind of go over the highlights for each one. So the first one we're going to talk about is probably the most contentious. It's the bonded or permanent retainer. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people walking around who've had a bonded retainer for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and it's working just fine for them. And that's wonderful. Part of that is how well it was made, how well it was adapted, how well you were a good case for a bonded retainer, how well you keep it clean. So there's a lot of variables that go into that, trying to get that right fit for a bonded retainer. For me, if you're going to do a bonded retainer, I like the sinus shaped bonded retainer. It's kind of like almost like what you see here in this picture, this tiny picture up at the top. So you are able to floss still within it. I also like bonded retainers that are only bonded on the ends, the canines, or just 2 teeth, so that you can get through most of those teeth at least, and they're not completely occluded from flossing. I don't like the bonded retainers that bond on 6 spots. I don't like those at all, because it's just a hygiene nightmare. And I've seen, on the flip side, for as many people coming in and asking for a bonded retainer, I feel like I always have to spend a lot of time convincing people they really don't want one, because I'll go over all the risk, benefits, and alternatives, and they'll kind of see the risk that can happen. Most hygienists hate bonded retainers because they see what happens. The debris, the calculus gets stuck all in it. Patients can get periodontal disease. They can get decay under the bonded retainer. So unless you are just a hygiene fanatic, you're really great at floss threaders, you can get in there, you're really adept at using them, you're using a water pick and a Sonicare, you can get all around the darn thing, then that's great. But if not, don't get one. It's not a good fit for you. Also, the other tricky thing that's going to come with a bonded retainer is when those things break. If they're bonded on all 6 points instead of just 2, the bonded on 2 I feel a little better, because if one breaks, it's pretty obvious. But the ones that are bonded on all 6 points, if one gets loose, you may not know that it got loose. And then what's going to happen is that tooth that's no longer attached is going to start moving forward or rotating, and you won't notice it till you see it. And by then it's too late, because now we got to take the whole thing off, and we got to do either braces or aligners all over again. At this point, there's probably no way to fix it with a retainer itself. So that's one of those important things to know. Okay. So we talked about benefits of bonded retainer. It can be made in-house. That means the doctor can bend it, can customize it there, or it can be 3D printed. It can be custom cast and made in a lab. That's my preference. That way it's really well adapted. If you have what we call an active bonded retainer, and that's a bonded retainer that's made, say, with a braided wire or something like that, it's a multiple strand wire, these things, they can become, like, again, they actually could be active theoretically. So if they're not put on right, or if they kind of quasi unravel, it'll actually move the teeth just like braces. So all kinds of troubles can happen. And I like to tell doctors, if you place a bonded retainer, you're married to this patient. As a matter of fact, I tell them you're married to this patient for life. So it doesn't matter where the patient goes, unless you came up with a plan for that bonded retainer as to maintenance, what happens when it breaks. You had an actual warranty with the patient. You had it written down and signed exactly who's responsible, who's not responsible. You're responsible. So you need to be, if you put this in your patient, you need to be checking on them. And if they up and move someplace else, or you lose touch with them, that's your responsibility to get back into touch with them. or to release the patient to somebody else's care. So that's why I don't recommend placing bonded retainers in patients that you don't have a long-term relationship with. It sounds weird. Bonded retainers. And I know this is a really kind of hot button subject, but a lot of people are using bonded retainers after their Invisalign cases, after their braces cases, after their 6-month smiles cases. But let's talk about a little bit more about the options that are out there and really what's most stable, biologically compatible, and what will give you the best, longest lasting outcome. And let's talk about the risks, benefits, and alternatives of these retainers too. What happens when you place a bonded retainer and things go bad? And it happens a lot. I'm really of the philosophy that if you're going to put a bonded retainer, you are married to that patient for life, or at least for as long as that bonded retainer goes on. So I do really believe that this should be factored into the cost of your orthodontic treatment. I think most cases, for me, it should be an upgrade. It's an option at the end of treatment. It comes with a warranty for X amount of time. And I help doctors all the time, create compliance and warranty documents. So buzz me if you need help with that. And the checks need to happen. And if the patient ghosts you or disappears, then the warranty should be void. Now, bonded retainers that are not well taken care of can cause a lot of problems. So you need to pick the right patient to place it on. All right. So anyways, I love it when companies send me samples, and this is probably one of my favorite bonded retainers to date. This is made by a Swiss company called Swiss Retainer. Let me show you the logo so that you can see it, because I think you'll remember it better. But can you see this? There it is. Okay. And basically, a couple of things they wanted me to let you know. I believe this is made with a biologically compatible material. It may be titanium. I'm not sure. It doesn't say here. But I know that it has a lot of flex that's built into it, so that it kind of gives with the patient when they're wearing it. And that's just natural, just biologically compatible. So it says it has a 3-dimensional design. It can be created. It's custom made for any patient. So I'm assuming you send your scan and they custom build this. It has no tensions when you insert it. And it says it's very easy to insert it and just bond it. Okay. Oh, it is milled from titanium grade 5 alloy. Okay. And minimal material fatigued. Because the spots are roughed up where you're going to do it. It's supposed to retain really well. It should be easier to floss underneath because it's not like a big bar or anything like that, and keep it clean. Maximal patient comfort, improved oil hygiene due to the custom form fit, avoidance of contact caries, periodontal disease, and calculus formation. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach for retention. Picking the right retention really has to do with where the patient started, a little bit about the patient. Are they somebody that could maintain a bonded retainer? They understand the responsibilities of the bonded retainer. Are they somebody that's looking for something very aesthetic? Are they looking for something to settle their bite? Did they start out with crowding in the back? Did they start out with crowding in the front? There's a million different factors that go into picking the right kind of retainer. And you really should have that conversation with the patient. Some types of retainers are much more expensive. I would consider some as an upgrade, like definitely my scripting to the patient at the beginning is your treatment will come with one set of retainers, whatever is best for the case. If you're looking for a different kind of retainers or longer lasting or permanent retainers, there is an additional upgrade fee of X, and you can fill in the blanks later. Certainly for me, bonded retainers are almost always, unless totally clinically necessary, like maybe in a major diastema case that had a frenectomy, must have a bonded retainer. That's part of the process. I tell them on the front end, you're going to have a bonded retainer. That's going to be included, and they might have an Essex overlay on top of it. I'm going to cover that. That's not going to be an upgrade. But for any other patient, unless we've already worked that out at the beginning, that's necessary as a splint or something, a bonded retainer is a big upgrade fee, like maybe at least $500. Because once you place that bonded, you are married to that patient for life, basically. And I can't tell you how many, and I'm sure hygienists can tell you the same stories even more than me. They hate them. Yeah. So I think that before you place the bonded, you'll want to make sure that if you are not the patient's treating general dentist, that you
communicate that to the general dentist and make sure they're okay with it, because a lot of times hygienists will just pop the darn things off when they clean them, and then repair on these can be expensive, can be time consuming for both patient, can be frustrating, and even having it broken for one day, things can start to relapse. So an emergency on a bonded retainer is a major emergency, like it is. So if your office is closed, then you need to have a place for the patient to go. It's not unlike any other major problem. So if you're placing these, it's a huge commitment for a general dental office to have someone that can CYA, basically cover your bleep, when you're out of town. So think twice before you place a bunch of these, unless you have a plan in place. Also, you want to make sure a patient understands the warranty. Usually I'll warranty them up to the first 30 days. Any other breakage beyond that is an additional fee of X to remove it, repair it, replace it. Maybe $500, $400. You need to have that written in writing and have them sign to it, because I'm telling you, they will break often, and the patients are going to get pissed off. So you need to be very clear, especially if it isn't something that is just elective, the patient's asking for it. Sure, we can do a bonded retainer, but it's an upgrade fee of X. There's only warranty for the first 30 days. Any breakage that happens, or movement that happens because there is breakage that is undetected by them, you got to teach them how to detect it. It's an additional fee of X, Y, and Z. So just let them know it can get expensive. Also, patients that have bonded retainers cannot bite into, they can't eat normal things. Like, it changes everything. And if they're going straight from braces, maybe they're used to it. But if they're going from aligners, it's a big change. So you can't bite into bagels, apples, pizza crust. There's a lot of things for life. Until, as long as you have it on, you have to chew, you have to use a knife and fork to chew everything up. Nothing with your front teeth. And most people have a very hard time with that, permanently. Yeah, there's some people that do whatever with their bonded retainers and they stay on, but that's the exception to the rule. So you need to give the patient the rules and let them pick if that's the right fit for them, because a lot of patients hate it. I had one, I hated it. I had it taken off within a year. I was like, no, thank you. I cannot floss this good. It's just not, calculus builds up on the back of it unless you can use a water pick and stuff. But yeah, anyways. Okay. So let's go. That was a big, big digression.
The Essex retainer is a brand. It's kind of like I call it Kleenex or Charmin. Essex is a brand of clear retainer. There's tons of brands of clear retainer, and most people just call them Essex type or Essex like retainers, or a clear retainer, But that's, like I said, Essex is just a brand, like McDonald's is a brand, right? For hamburgers. But not the best analogy. But anyways, Essex is great. I'd say it's the most common retainer you're going to see now. They're very fast. They're very aesthetic. You can make them in-house. That means a lot of doctors can just make them as needed on the spot within an hour or two in their lab, in their office. Sometimes they send them out to another lab. But one of the cool things is with Essex retainer is that if you have one and you're like, oops, you forgot to wear it, you went to camp for a week, and then, okay, you put it back in your mouth. Well, the cool thing is if there's a tiny bit of movement, it'll just move it back, just like an aligner. Now, if it's too much movement, the Essex itself will not move it back. You could use something like a vibratory device to try to get it to settle in a little bit more. You could try chewing on chewies. That'll help it out. But that's the cool part about Essex retainer. The bad part about Essex retainer for me is that very rarely when you get your braces off or when you get your aligners done is your bite really balanced and settled. So maybe you're biting on the right side more than the left side, or left more than the right, or the front more than the back, and the Essex will just preserve that bite the way it was at that point, and you'll never get a really harmonious long-term bite, which is why I'm not a fan of them for immediately after you finish your braces. Not most of the time, maybe sometimes, but what else? They're not meant to last a lifetime. They're meant, on average, they start getting deformed, distorted, maybe 6 months to a year, which is why most people need to buy them in packs or bulk. I would recommend, if you have this retainer, to have a plan to have it replaced on a regular basis. Don't wait till it starts to wear out. You're not even going to know when it wears out. Wearing out doesn't mean it cracks or breaks. It can become deformed or distorted over time, and you're not going to know. So you need to be regularly replacing these. So if you got this as your final retainer, there's lots of options, and I think there's more options even coming in the future. But this is something that needs to be replaced regularly. If you're 18, you're going to need maybe 50 more Essex retainers. I mean, honestly, you will. So you need to have a plan. So, and I think a lot of times we just abandon our patients and we're like, bye, braces are off. Bye-bye. See you later. Call me if you lose your retainer. But if you have an Essex, you need a long-term plan. Today, we're going to be talking about making clear retainers, or people often call them Essex retainers, even though they're not always brand Essex, after your any kind of ortho case, braces, Invisalign, doesn't matter what it is. So I think this is something that's a little bit confusing for most doctors. A lot of times they call this Essix, but that's just like a brand. It's just like we call Invisalign clear aligners, but it's just a brand, right? So I'm on the Zendura homepage just because that's my favorite brand at the moment. I've been really impressed by the clarity, the properties, the wear. It also they have two main products, just to let you know. There's the regular Zendura, and there's Zendura FLX or Zendura Flex. So this is Zendura Flex. This is regular Zendura. Okay. So when you're picking your retainer material to fabricate it, your thermoforming plastic, of course, you got to decide what brand you want to use. You've got Invisacryl, you've got Essex brand, you've got Zendura brand. There's a ton of other ones, Proform. They're all FDA approved, right? So things you need to think about first of all is what kind of thermoforming machine do you have? So you need to start there because you're going to need certain diameters to make it work, okay? So some of them are square, some of them are rectangular. Obviously, you need to get the right size to fit what you have, okay? Then work backwards. Once you know what type of machine you have, your thermoformer, okay? Then you need to think about what kind of material you want. And there's different, my goodness, I wonder if this is really rare that they're selling that much. That's incredible. In any case, then you're going to need to think about what diameter you want. So you can see that these are 0.76 millimeters, 0.76, 0.76. So that's 030. Most people reference it as the inches, which is 030, 035, 040. Usually, I mean, for me, the 030 is really more for moving teeth. I tend to use the 040 as my preference for retention. It's just thicker. It lasts longer. It's a little more bulky and a little hard to get off, but that's just my personal preference. Some people will use thinner ones. You're going to have to replace it more. So these are all things that you want to talk to your patient about because even Zendura says on average, you know, up to 1.5, 2 years for an Essex retainer. If this is a 15-year-old patient, you got to do the math. How many retainers are they going to need in their lifetime? Because retention is lifetime, right? And what is your plan for this patient to be replacing these? Because once they start to wear out, crack, and break, which they will do, the teeth are going to start to move. So you need to have a retention protocol already in place, okay? And if you don't know how to do that, feel free to contact me. I'm going to be putting on some webinars about this, and I work one-on-one with my StraightSmile Solutions clients about this. So in any case, you can kind of see the price points. These are running about $4 a sheet. This is if you buy them in bulk. The Essex is definitely cheaper. I think it's more like $1.50, $2 a cheap. Invisacryl too. I have heard not so great things about Invisacryl. You can order that from Great Lakes, that it's brittle, that it stains. So you're going to need to just try different things. Also, my other last tip for you is make sure you are not trying to, I don't know what's the word, don't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. So, I mean, you can't have like a really junky thermoformer and be using good material like Zendura. This is not going to work out, okay? So you need to invest in your mini star or whatever you're going to do, a decent thermoformer. You're talking like a couple $1,000s max so that you're making these properly, because if they're overcooked, undercooked, they're not going to have the properties that they need in order to keep the teeth straight. So here you are doing this great job on this aligner or this braces case, and now it's going to go junk. It's not going to stay good. So, you know, one thing to keep in mind, make sure your team is trained to make a proper retainer. And if your team really doesn't know how to do it, then just take that scan, send it off to the lab, have them virtually remove the attachments or the braces, and have it made for you properly.
Let's say the patient has a Hawley or has an Essex retainer, which are probably the two most common types of retainers out there besides bondeds. Again, depends on the patient's bite, depends on what the patient's looking for. There's a lot of benefits to each. Obviously, Essex retainers last on average 6 months. So the patient is 13, they might need 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 upper and lower retainers in a lifetime. You need to build that in and let them know that they're going to need to create a retainer subscription program and come back regularly to get new retainers. A lot of time what happens is they don't understand that and they get really mad when they find out they have to do that because that's an additional fee. So you really should set the price and perhaps even charge them on the front end and just have them come regularly to pick them up, or give them a whole bunch at one time so they can just switch them out as they need it. So you should really build that in too. again, if you're offering your standard set as an Essex retainer and it only lasts 6 months and you're not telling the patient that on the front end that there's other options, they're going to be mad. So you need to be very, very clear about that. So here's my scripting for wearing Essex and Hawleys. There's no one size fits all approach. So in a nutshell, some patients can go to nights after 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year. Everyone's different. So this is my scripting. I empower the patients and the parents with the scripting and then just let them do. And if they're not sure, they can come in and check. But I'll just read it, just in case somebody is listening to this in the car or something. So let's say the patient's name is Sarah. They're coming in, they've been wearing it full time for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And they're asking when they can go to nights. So this is my scripting. Sarah, you've been doing a great job with your retainers. Let's talk about phasing your retainers down. I know you've been wearing them 24/7, but you take them out for eating and sports. Tell me a little bit about how that is for you. What is the longest you left them out? Now pause and listen to the response. Patient might say, oh, oops, I went camping. I left them out for the whole day. Or I went to my friend's house, spent the night, forgot them. Okay. Don't shame them on that because these things happen. This is normal. Okay. So tell me how that felt when you put the retainers back in. And they'll probably say, oh, it was really uncomfortable, painful. I felt sore. Okay. So that's telling you that your teeth started to move. That's not something that we want to do. We should never have that feeling. If it feels like that, you left them out too long. We want to find that sweet spot where you can leave them out for maybe a few hours and not have that feeling. And if so, that's totally fine. So patient might say, yeah, I leave them out for lunch every day for a few hours, or lunch and PE, I put them back in. Feels fine. Feels exactly the same. Great. Then you're totally fine to leave them out for, say, 3 hours. Let's try next month leaving them out for 4 hours and see how that feels, and so on. And each month, add 1 more hour slowly. And then over time, you can start to progress to nights. So it might take them 3, 4, 5 months to graduate to nights. It might take a year. That is my scripting for the patients, because too often we say after 6 months, magically you can go to nights. Well, that's really, usually when you tell patients that, in their mind, they're thinking, I can wear it 3 nights a week. They're saying nights every night. Or sometimes they're not big sleepers. They may only sleep 4 hours a night. Well, that's not enough. Okay. So by nights, I'm thinking 12, 11, 10, 11, 12 hours. You put them in after dinner, you leave them in till breakfast. That's not always what patients interpret when you say that. So you need to be very clear what nights mean. So for me, when I tell patients that, nights mean after dinner, you put them in, brush, floss, and you leave them in till you get up in the morning and have breakfast. 11, 12 hours. That's nights. And then maybe after a few years, you can go to every other night. See how that feels. Right now, just personally, I still wear retainers. I probably wear mine 1 night a week, and we're like 20 years out. But if I don't wear them for 2 weeks, they're sore. And that means they're starting to move. Now, that being said, if you have an Essix and that soreness is there, often it moves it back because it encapsulates the whole tooth. So it moves it better. If you have a Hawley, it may not. It may help with spaces, but it won't help to move other movements. So once it's moved, it's moved. So that's what we call relapse. And there's not much we can do about that at that point. At that point, you'd have to go back and have some type of treatment to fix it. So anyways, all right, that was a big, long spiel, but hopefully you get the idea about retainers and just creating a great retention aftercare program, great communications with your patients on the front end when they start treatment so that they know what they're getting and they're satisfied and they feel like you took care of them in all the phases of treatment, not just the active phase, but as well as the retention phase.
So most common retainer is the Essix type retainer. I call it that because that's just a brand, but there's lots of brands names within that. Zendura and Visacryl, Vivera. There's different features on these kind of clear retainers, and they have different biomechanical properties. And I know I'm talking like kind of crazy high level. Some have better wear properties, some are thicker, some are more brittle, some stain more. So some do better at moving teeth if they move and moving them back. Some are thicker and better for bruxers. So you can go on and on and on. My best reference for you, if you want to learn about at least Zendura branded ones, and there's a variety of different Zendura brands, shapes, sizes, thicknesses, is to contact the team at Bay Materials Zendura. I'm glad to introduce you if you want to email me at info@straightsmilesolutions.com. I have more difficulty talking to the team at Essex Dentsply. They don't give me any information. So anyways, on average, these probably going to last from 6 months to 2 years. Since retention is for a lifetime, you need to do the math. You need to have a plan for your patient and explain how that's going to work for replacements, what your warranty is. This all needs to be in writing on the front end of the treatment before you even start the orthodontic treatment. But don't panic if you're already mid-treatment or you're at the end.
This is Dr. Amanda from StraightSmile Solutions, and I had a couple great questions come in today that I wanted to answer. First one was about, it's actually a pretty common question. It's about Vivera retainers, which is a branded retainer, which is made by Invisalign, which is AKA publicly traded company, Align Technology. That is their brand of retainers. You can buy them in packs of 1 or packs of 4. You do need to buy them through your dentist. Any dentist that is Invisalign certified can prescribe Vivera retainers. In order to get those retainers, you'll need to either have a scan or an impression done by your dentist. If you've gone through Invisalign treatment, and you're happy with the outcome and your dentist is happy with the outcome, that last stage, and the very last aligner can be that file, that 3D image can be transferred to be made into a Vivera retainer. So for clarification, you really shouldn't use your last aligner as a retainer because it's way thinner than an actual retainer should be to hold the teeth. So you're moving your teeth. The properties of the plastic that moves the teeth during Invisalign treatment or regular aligner treatment is much thinner and much more elastic-ish in order to move the teeth, right? So that's the properties that we need to move teeth. When we're done and we want to hold those teeth in the final position for life, then we need a thicker retainer. So the approximate thickness, just for us dental geeks out there, for movement retainers or aligners are usually at 0.30 in terms of thickness. I think that's in inches. And the actual retention is usually 0.40. So it's like a little bit thicker, not that much. You're talking like little microns, like tiny bit thicker, but it does make a difference when you feel the retainers versus the aligners. They're much stiffer, which is the goal, right? Little harder to get off, etc. So approximate amount of time that they last for, which is why you really can't just have one retainer. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, not only for dentists, but also for patients is, okay, I'm going to either use my last aligner as a retainer. Well, they're not going to stay straight if you do that. So that's not a great idea. Same thing with retainer. You can't just have one retainer. You need to have many retainers throughout your lifetime. And you need to factor that into your budget. And that's a really important question that you need to ask your dentist. How is that going to work? Do they store your final image in the cloud? If it's with Invisalign, they do. What happens if you move and go to another state? How are you going to get more retainers? Can you just order more retainers ahead of time and kind of stockpile them, which is what I kind of recommend? There are some services out there and companies out there, and I think it's going to become a lot more popular that have retainer subscription programs, not only third-party direct-to-consumer, but also through your dentist. So these are all fantastic questions to ask your dentist. If you're a dentist, feel free to talk to me about it. I have a lot of blogs on the subject. I've helped doctors set up their own retainer subscription programs. And just so there's no miscommunication between dentists and patients of what you need to do at the end. Generally, I will, if I'm super happy with the outcome of an Invisalign case, I'm going to go ahead and order that Vivera off the last aligner, but I'm going to tell the patient they need 4 uppers and lowers. I'll include 1 with my treatment. Okay. After that, that's on them. If they want to order a pack of 4, I'm not going to necessarily upsell it. I'm going to charge them maybe like $300 or $400. That's about my fee for 8 more, 4 uppers and 4 lowers. But that's my fee, right? I'm not making anything off that. If they get it right at the time of debond. But if they get it later, there probably will be an additional fee. If teeth move and you need another set, then that's another scan and another delivery. So that's going to be slightly more expensive than if I just push a button to order it. So I don't know if that makes sense. If you have a 3D printer in your office and a vacuum form or a BioStar machine, this is something you can totally do. You can't buy the Invisalign branded Vivera material on its own, the sheets. That has to be made at Invisalign headquarters, which takes a little more time. But you can make clear retainers within your own office, or you can go to a regular lab and have them made, but it's not going to be made of Vivera material. Personally, who cares? There's a lot of other great 040 materials that are out there that to me work just as well. They may not be scalloped and have the same trim line. They may not be branded. Okay. But, they are there. But in that case, you know, that final STL, you need to find a place to store that if you're doing that, if you're not using Invisalign. So, and there's a benefit to that because anytime the patient needs more, they can just call you, you push a button. Hey, it's Dr. Amanda from StraightSmile Solutions, StraightSmileSolutions.com. And today we're going to talk about, yay, you're done with your Invisalign case. What do we do next at the end? Like, yay, we got there. Great outcome. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I would not rush. Like patient finish, let's say it was a 25 case tray case, and you got to the end of 25, and patient just finished 25 yesterday, and they're like, hey, can I get my retainers? You might want to hang out for a few weeks, especially if there were some extrusions and stuff, just to let things stabilize a little bit. You know, in the land of braces, we do this all the time for like a month or two. So kind of tie it all together and let it sit. It's kind of like letting things stabilize. Because when you pop those attachments off, you might get a little shifting, you know, without the attachments on. So best to let it settle for a little bit, but that's just my tip. You could also build a couple passive aligners into your treatment plans, which basically is like, okay, we finished at 25. So 26 is basically just 25 again, but at least you get to change the aligners and get fresh ones. So patients don't really know it's passive aligners. So that way it's built in there. Just a little tip. But if you're doing unlimited or comprehensive, you know, it's free, so why not? And you can do that with any aligner company. But anyway, so let's say we're done, we hung out for a little bit, we're pretty sure things are stable. How do we order retainers? And of course, retainers is, oh my goodness, I have so many blogs on retainers and retainer options and retainer aftercare programs and retainer subscription programs and what to do. But remember, retainers are for a lifetime, okay? So, and I have like, if you want me to send you this, because I have, you know, like I said, almost 1,000 pieces of content, email me at info@straightsmilesolutions.com, or message me on my website, straightsmilesolutions.com, or through one of every other social media, and I can send you exactly what you're looking for. But I have some step-by-step instructions, exactly what to say, do, everything like that, what your options are. But real quick, remember, retainers are for life. The actual frequency of retainer wear is customized for the patient. You can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. Always better to wear it more than less, etc., etc. One clear retainer will not last you for a lifetime. You're going to need numerous. You need to be straightforward with your patient in terms of what's included with their plan. Ideally, you want to do that on the front end and not the back end, and let them know at the beginning. Patients will get really, really, really upset if you did not give them what they expected. And if they're coming in expecting upper and lower bonded retainers and you're giving them one set of clear retainers that only last a few months, they're going to be pissed off and you're going to get a really bad review. So you should be having this retainer discussion like before you start, pretty much every few months. You may not know exactly what the right retainer is for them. And that's okay to say that. Hey, I pick a customized approach. There's lots of different retainers. Did you come in with a certain type of expectation? I would love to hear about it. And I can tell you my philosophy and what I think might work for you. And when I work with clients one-on-one with StraightSmile Solutions, we talk about that. And we talk about each patient and kind of where we think the retainer should be and what might be good for this patient. But anyways, Vivera retainers are great retainers. They're customizable. There's a lot of cool things that they have. They're nice. They're pretty strong. You will still need several Viveras over a lifetime. You might even need more than that. They come in packs of 1 or packs of 4. So 8 total, 4 uppers and lowers. Let me walk you through what to do. Let's say you want to order Viveras and you don't want to go. You can order very similar retainers. It may not have the same scalloping or some of the same features. Might be a different price point. It may not come in a pack of 4, but you could order very similar clear retainers from any local lab as well. Whether they are they should be like 040 and stuff like that. But when you make them in-house just in your own suck down machine, it's probably not going to be as good as a Vivera, because unless you have a really, really high quality, like BioStar pressure-y suck down thing, and I have some videos about that versus just your regular vacuum former, it's not going to be as good. You're going to get more relapse. So I wouldn't recommend that their forever retainers just be something you made in your back lab unless you have a really good lab. So just saying, there is a difference. And I've seen a lot of relapse happen with in-house clear retainers that are just made in somebody's lab. Okay. So personally, if they relapse in the first couple of months and you just made an in-house retainer, you're liable. You need to redo their braces or their Invisalign. And of course, if you did, a comprehensive case, you can retreat at no cost, but, hassle for you, right? So let's talk about that. So you let it settle for a little bit. That's great. And now you go in and you're going to order your Vivera. So you need to make a decision. So you go to the right side, to the right of the patient portal, and you click Vivera retainers, right? And this is really small, so I apologize, but you guys get the idea. And then they're going to ask you, do you want 1 or do you want the pack of 4? And I think the pack of 4 is 4 uppers and 4 lowers. 8 total is $275. One is, oh, I can't even see that, 95, something like that. So one upper and one lower, or something like that. Do you want to treat both arches, upper or lower? And then you're going to go ahead and say where you are. Do I want to make it off? Am I going to send a new scan? Am I going to take the attachments off, clean them up, rescan? That's the recommended choice. Or do you want to order it off one of the previous aligners? And if so, you need to say which one. It will usually fit better to go ahead and take the attachments off and rescan. Some people, what they'll do at the end of treatment is they will order just one off the end aligner and then, let their gums get healthier, get a cleaning, all that, then rescan and make the pack of 4 as a bundle, but that's an option. So there's a lot of things. It would be better, but I don't know many people that give the pack of 4 uppers and the lowers as stock. That's like an option. It's a nice thing, to do. They're going to need more than a couple in a lifetime. So again, you got to clarify that with your patient. What are they getting? What are the options? Nobody likes an upsell at the end. So you need to be having, and there's a lot of cool retainer subscription programs that are out there, Retainers for Life, Retainers Forever, Retainer Forever Align Club, Pro Align maybe has one. There's so many different things that are out there that you can, third-party ones that you can join or your patient may choose to join. So, if you don't come up with a plan, it's only a matter of time before venture capitalists jump on this because it's a huge opportunity. So I suggest you come up with your own in-house plan for now, right? Another question is, are you going to put a fixed lingual retainer on? If so, it's recommended that you put it on first and then rescan. And they're saying that they may or may not have to cut a window around that, So, because, anytime you're taking an aligner on and off over a fixed thing, it can torque it. So they're saying they're not responsible. So that's a question. So again, I have tons of content on fixed retainers. You should definitely go to my YouTube, put in bonded retainer or permanent retainer or whatever. If not, email me, message me on any of my socials and I'll send you the content. But I highly recommend you don't just use a braided wire and slap it on. That never works out good. So you should have it customized, done by the lab, done passively, because I've seen some terrible stuff happen with that. What else? Pontics. They're going to ask if you want a Pontic. If you want it, obviously you're going to have to fill it, but I have tons of videos on filling Pontics as well. This is a new thing. I didn't even know they had that. They're going to ask you if you want bite ramps. And I love, love, love that they have that. So now I'm actually more on the Vivera bandwagon than I ever was after I saw that. It must be new because I hadn't seen that in a while. So why would you do that? I would only, obviously we're not actively moving teeth, so we're not leveling the curve of speed, but a lot of times when you have plastic over the back teeth, you can, if you have a clencher or a grinder, you can get a posterior open bite. So for those type of patients, and if you've seen that happening during your treatment, or if you've experienced posterior open bite during your treatment, or if you had bite ramps during your treatment, you might want to consider putting them on your retention as well. And for me, like as a clencher, it really is nice to be able to have that type of ramp just to wear at nighttime. It takes a lot of pressure, like a lot less headaches and stuff like that. It's a free service, so you can go ahead and put that on if you want to. But keep in mind, you're going to be front loading those top teeth if you do that, those front teeth. So if you have endo or trauma teeth, you would not want to do that, or perio or something like that. You'd want to have a full stable. So just things to think about. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then you go ahead and submit and you pay. And they ship it. So that's your Vivera retainer. So I think they're pretty good value. Vivera stain a lot more than some other retainers do, whether it's the Zendura A or the Essex. I've done a lot of staining challenges. So just keep that in mind, that they do stain. So patients shouldn't be eating or drinking with them in, again, wear frequency might be 3 months full-time, 6 months full-time, something like that. Please read my other blogs about phasing down your retainer, when to go to night, stuff like that. If you don't do this right, you're going to get relapse. So it's really critical that you do it the right way, and not every patient is the same. So
This is Dr. Amanda with StraightSmile Solutions, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more today about retainers. retention and how to pick the right menu of retainer options after you finish your braces or your aligners, your Invisalign, your Clear Correct, whatever you're having. So I know this is a real hot button topic on our forums. We get a lot of questions, not only from doctors, but also from patients that are on our patient-facing forums about retention questions. What's the best? And there really is no right answer. Every kind of case may have a better kind of retention option, and certain retainers will last only so long. Um, the most common retainer is your clear Essex retainer. It looks like an Invisalign. It doesn't last very long though. So on average, I would say a couple months to a year. So in a lifetime, you're going to have to switch these out a lot because you do need to wear your retainers for life, at least at nighttime. So this is something you need to think about whenever you're going for any type of orthodontic treatment. You need to ask these questions and find out, okay, great, I'm investing this amount in my treatment, but how much is it going to cost me to invest later? And what if I upgraded to a better type of retainer, a more durable type of retainer? It's probably going to cost me less, right? So anyways, I'm talking here about Hawley retainers, but not a standard Hawley retainer. A standard Hawley retainer, you can probably see pictures of that. It only covers this part, the wire, and then there's nothing on the sides. This is my favorite kind of Hawley retainer, and you don't have to have purple. This just happens to be blinged out. I call this a circumferential or wraparound Hawley retainer. This is the type I have. I've had mine for 20 years, and I've never had to adjust it. They're incredibly awesome. You can get clear here, but the problem with the clear is it'll turn yellow over time. So, I mean, it's really fun to bling it out with the colors. But I do recommend that patients wear it full time after they get their braces or aligners off for at least 6 months. That's just my recommendation. The pros to this is that it keeps everything straight, but it allows the teeth and the bite to fully settle and fully interdigitate. So I don't know if any of you, especially aligner patients, when you get your treatment done, sometimes you feel like the right side's hitting more than the left side, or you're not fully balanced in how you're biting. This will even everything up. And then later, if you want to get a clear one, you can. But this is awesome. The only thing it doesn't do that well is it doesn't help to keep the teeth all level. Like it doesn't help to prevent extrusions of the front teeth here. So you can see how this treatment is done, but these are two different levels. So on this end, it's not so great. So like I said, there's pros and cons to everything. So you have to think about these things. I actually really like Hawley's. That's my second one. There's all kinds of shapes, sizes, clasps, stuff like that. I love wraparound Hawley's. If you'd like an introduction to that, I've done a bunch of blogs and vlogs on that. You can go ahead and look into it, or I can send you information. Listen, I have a wraparound Hawley for me on the top, and it's lasted, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, a very long time. Several decades, okay? One retainer, well made, no adjustments ever needed. This goes right in. I wear it a few times a week. It's perfect. I love these because it allows the bite to fully settle. Some people will use these and then they'll transition later into the Essix. A lot of patients love Hawleys because they're really durable and they last a long time. So saves you a lot of money.
As you can see, I have my two trusty pliers here. This is my 3-prong plier. Why is it called 3-prong? Because it has 3 prongs, right? And this is what I call a bird beak plier. There's a couple other names for this. I think some people call it like a 139 plier or something like that. But basically it has a square tip and then a rounded tip. So if you do not have these 2 pliers, I would not attempt to start adjusting retainers yet because you need both of those. All right, so we have 3 different types of clasps here. Okay, we have a C clasp, a ball clasp, and an Adams clasp. These are your 3 basic types of retainer clasps. When you make retainers or any type of orthodontic appliance, you can specify which clasps you want, but my suggestion, unless you have a specific reason, is to leave it up to the lab tech to select the best clasp, and you can tell them that. And if you don't, it's pretty much understood that they're going to select the best one for that case. Personally, this is not my favorite at all. I don't like these because they bend easily and get distorted and things happen. So this is definitely my favorite for mixed dentition, the Adams clasp. Pretty indestructible, hard to mess up, and they fit pretty well. Downside is that sometimes the patients are going to bite on the clasp. There's not much you can do about that. If they do, they just need to get used to it. Ball clasps are great, but they break easily. So if you put one on, you want to have many because if you lose one, it's always good to have another one. But besides that, the only other thing you got going on here that needs to be adjusted is the labial bow. And this is totally adjusted wrong, the way this came on this model, or maybe someone was playing with it already. But this is definitely not Granted, the teeth are chipped, not where it should be. So it's over adjusted. So, but today we're going to be focusing on these 3 clasps. So basically, in a nutshell, this is the way I adjust them, and everyone might be slightly differently. Do this. Woo, this one is tight. If I can get this. Whoa, great fit. Orthodontic lab. There we go. Got it off. Okay, that's a great sign if it's tight. All right, so to adjust a C clasp, I just tighten a tiny bit right here. The main thing is the ball needs to be under the undercut. It cannot impinge in the gingiva. And when I try retainers in, the first thing I'm going to do is snap them down and check the gingiva and see if they are, engaged or impinging the gingiva at all. Because start there, okay? And once you're kind of out of the woods, then make sure it's seating fully. The acrylic needs to be fully seating. If it's rocking or anything like that, it's not ready yet for adjusting. So before you start messing with the clasp, you want to make sure that your retainer is actually seating and seating comfortably. Once you get it seating and it's a little too loose, then you can start adjusting the clasp. So this one's an easy adjust. This one's also a pretty easy adjust. You're just going to use your 3-prong, okay? And you're just going to tighten it just a tiny bit right there at the little bend, okay? And sometimes you need to tighten it here and here. Just a tiny squeeze, a little bit goes a long way. If you overdo it, you can either flip this around and do it the other way, or you can use the square portion of this to go ahead and loosen it. And you know what? You're just going to need to play with it to try to practice it. But, in a nutshell, it's something like this, okay? To tighten, like this, okay? To loosen, you could either do like this, or you can flip it around and do like this, okay? All different ways, no wrong or right way. With the Adams clasp, I always start adjusting closest to the acrylic, okay? And if you're trying to tighten it, I'm going to squeeze like this and this, both spots, okay? If you're trying to loosen it, the opposite generally, okay? But remember, this will often interfere with the occlusion, but not a huge deal if it's in mixed dentition. So that's pretty much it. That's how I adjust retainer clasp. It's going to take a lot of trial and error for you to learn how to do this more ideally. As for the labial bow, that's a whole, it's a lot more challenging, okay? So, hopefully your labial bows are coming ideal for sure. And if you're using this just for a functional appliance for ortho, it's probably not a huge deal at all to have the labial bowl, contacting and ideal. But if you're using it for actual retention, it is a huge deal. So hopefully we'll get to that at a later time. Today, we're going to talk about adjusting labial bows. And if you have a Hawley retainer, labial bows are really useful. This is kind of how we moved teeth, minor tooth movements, before aligners were invented. So we've been doing this for hundreds of years, and it's a really economical way to have some minor tooth movement. Lab fee on a basic Hawley, and this is a little bit more of a blinged out Hawley, but is maybe somewhere around $75 to $125, depending on how much you bling it out, how much you customize it. So this is a labial bow right here. Let's turn it around, okay? And usually it goes from canine to canine, okay? Now, to tighten a labial bow, you're going to need 2 major pliers to adjust it. The first one is called a 3-prong plier. As you can see here, okay, as you can see here, it has 3 prongs. Easy to know. The opposite, or the inverse of the 3-prong plier, and both of these you should have if you're going to be messing with Hawleys, is called a bird beak plier. So a bird beak plier, you can see, has a rounded tip and also has a square tip. So it has 2 tips, one is round and one is square. That's why it's called bird beak, okay? So to tighten the 3-prong, with the 3-prong plier, you want to find your U-loops, 1, 2, okay? And then you're going to put the doubles on the top and the singles on the bottom. See that? Okay. And when you do this, this will tighten. Same thing on the other side. You want to tighten ever so small. Okay. Just a tiny little squeeze. Sometimes I'll even tighten just by squeezing with my fingers. Sometimes I'll even tighten, if I want to, just by taking the bird beak and compressing it like that. A little bit goes a long way with tightening. You only need to tighten if, when you try it in the mouth, if there's clearly a gap between the incisors and the bow. The bow should be touching the incisors, but it shouldn't be pushing on it super hard. You just want it lightly touching the incisors to be passive. And if you want it active, you give it a tiny squeeze with the 3-prong plier. And that's pretty much it. Now, that is what you do if you want to retract teeth, pull them back or close a gap. But that's only going to happen on the top arch if you have place to put them, okay? So when you have a Hawley like this, there is acrylic right here, see? And there's a space between the teeth and the acrylic. The teeth cannot move if the acrylic is well adapted to the incisors. So with the top teeth, first of all, you have to see if there's even overjet. If you get a bite, I'm going to show you an example what I mean by this. Let's get in a model, okay? If you get a bite, say like this, okay? And if you look here, the bottom teeth are hitting the incisors. As a matter of fact, if you got a piece of articulating paper and put it right here, bit down and all around, you would see marks up here. If you see marks up here, cannot retract teeth with a Hawley. It's impossible because there's no place for them to go because they're hitting the bottom teeth. The only time you can close a diastema or retract teeth with a Hawley is if there's overjet, okay? So not possible in this case. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they think they can close a space or retract incisors. Bottom teeth shouldn't be a problem because usually, unless you have a negative overjet, if you have a positive overjet, it shouldn't be a problem retracting bottom teeth and closing a gap with a Hawley. So anyways, that is your trick. Remember, you're going to need a bird beak and a 3-prong plier, okay? And articulating paper is also really helpful. If you need to remove acrylic, you can just get a really skinny acrylic burr and get in there and remove a little bit of acrylic. A tiny bit at a time goes a long way. Adjust this with the 3-prong. Wear it for a couple weeks to a month, and then repeat. Always check with articulating paper to see if there's still clearance to do that. And that is my trick on how to use Hawleys to close spaces.
The last one I'm going to talk about today is positioners. I love positioners. I think they're fantastic. Again, old school is new again. These were really hot back in the 60s and 70s. They're like gigantic custom mouth guards. They are so cool. They're like aligners on steroids. Yes, they're very bulky, but they're incredible because if there's any movement, just stick them back in, you bite around on them for a few nights, and the teeth move back, right? They also encourage nasal breathing instead of mouth breathing. They last forever. They get a little gross. You have to clean them good, but really, really awesome products. You can get a custom one made for around 200-ish. I mean, it's not cheap, but granted, it's upper and lower in one. And they only need to wear them at nighttime. So that's another plus.
Sometimes you need that, the patient needs to get out of braces because they're in the military. They're going to be deployed to Afghanistan. They're transferring schools, moving out of state. You need to get your patient into their finishing appliance and they need to walk out the door the minute they get their braces removed. What option do you have when you can't wait to send in scans and for a lab to fabricate your appliance? But we have a solution for that. So I'd like to say hello to the pre-finisher. The pre-finisher is a semi-custom tooth positioner. It's a preform finishing appliance that can be fitted immediately with no impressions required, and you don't have to send in scans to a lab. What we do is a quick cuspid-to-cuspid measurement, which will assure the selection of the correct size, making it an economical choice when custom appliance is not required or time is a factor. It's sized in 1 millimeter increments for precise fitting, available for non-extraction and extraction cases. It offers the ability to remove fixed appliances early and can be used as a final retainer. However, speaking on the positioner being used in sport or worn during homework, the pre-finisher is equally as versatile. Also made of a crystal flex material, just like the positioners, and the same properties exist with the pre-finisher. You'll be able to close slight spaces, and correct minor rotations. It also comes with molded airways for enhanced mouth breathing, and corrects and relates teeth in both arches simultaneously. And it will also work fantastically well in closing posterior open bites caused by aligner trays. So it eliminates the refinement equally as well as the positioner.
I wish I had these in stock in my office, because it's a great idea to stock them in a variety of sizes, because there's so many times when you have a patient that comes in, it's like, I'm moving out of state tomorrow. I need retainers now. Sure, you can make them a set of Essix if you have an in-house thermoformer. But the problem with the Essix is that, number one, unless the bite is fully settled on every single tooth, you're going to be preserving that poor occlusion for life. So this pre-finisher is going to be quicker than an Essix, because you don't have to take an impression, pour it up, thermoform it, trim it. It's just like you use a little ruler, you measure it, boom, you deliver it. It takes 2 seconds, right?
We send our pre-finisher with these rulers that have millimeter sizing on them and these little arrows right here. All you do is do a quick cuspid to cuspid or cuspid to midline measurement. Stick it right there on the distal end of the cuspid. Fold the ruler around, make sure it bends so it's flush with the teeth. And you do this ideally with the braces removed, so you get a much more flush measurement, but then that will give you your number. So as you can see, the results from the pre-finisher on this slide here, case on the left, case 1, you'll see the posterior open bite left from clear aligner treatment. After only wearing this 3 weeks at night, closes that open bite, and it's a lot more aesthetic and closer to a perfect occlusion. Case 2 after 4 weeks, and then a more severe open bite on case 3 after 8 weeks. The complete open bite virtually disappears. Like the positioner, the recommended wearing schedule for the pre-finisher is 4 hours during the day, and then overnight if comfortable for the patient. And you'll start realizing results within 2 to 3 weeks.
It's going to be cheaper than anything you send off to a lab for upper and lower, because it's just one appliance and not 2. So, and there's nothing to adjust. So it's like, it's idiot proof, I hate to say it,
right.
And it's pretty much indestructible. Like you can melt it if you stick it in the microwave, but for the most part, it's not going to break, crack, anything like that. It should last them for a very, very long time. It is probably my go-to solution, one of these, for anyone with poor hygiene. I wouldn't want to do a bonded retainer in that case. Some people with poor compliance, because even if they don't wear it for a day or 2, they put it in, everything goes back. Because it's, like I said, it's like an aligner on steroids. So
when you're talking about ensuring to a proper occlusion, orthodontic work, and teeth movement, what better insurance policy is there than the $70 pre-finisher?
That's crazy cheap. How quickly, if you need a replacement, can you get them to us? Was another question I got. Right.
Yeah, the biggest thing with the custom positioner in terms of delivering time is the approval process. If our lab techs can set up the appliance and send out the approval, but then that's on the doctor to, we'll notify you that the approval has been sent, but that's also up to the doctor to, okay, yes, this is approved, move forward. Because if an approval was requested by the doctor, we don't move until they say go.